Hello and welcome to this presentation of the eBanking suite for Microsoft Dynamics SL. My name is Rick Sandler. I'm one of the founding partners of SandlerCon Software. This presentation will include an overview of the 5 modules in the eBanking suite, followed by a demonstration of the workflow for accounts payable, electronic funds transfer, wire transfer plus, and positive pay. First, I'd like to tell you a bit about our company. We've been in business as SandlerCon Software since 1994, but we've been in the SL channel since the 1980s. Our mission is to develop high-quality software that extends your SL system. We sell our products exclusively through the Microsoft reseller channel. As you can see from this list of credits, we enjoy an excellent standing with Microsoft and the Microsoft Dynamics community. Of particular note is our most recent achievement of being awarded Certified for Microsoft Dynamics SL logo status for our eBanking suite. This means that the eBanking suite has met or exceeded Microsoft requirements for high-quality software. Make no mistake, eBanking is here to stay. If you were to simply search the phrase electronic banking, you'd find well over 1 million results, including page after page of product offerings, news reports, financial briefings, and so on. One of the greatest benefits of electronic banking is the ability for organizations like yours to automate banking processes and reduce errors by simply reducing the amount of data entry. If improving accuracy and reducing handling costs aren't enough to cause you to consider eBanking, let's talk about fraud avoidance. In 2008, a whopping 71% of companies surveyed found they were victim of attempted or actual payment fraud. This chart, taken from a survey conducted in 2009 by the Association of Financial Professionals, shows some very interesting statistics. As we can see, the overwhelming majority of attempts at payment fraud occur with paper checks. With today's desktop publishing software, it's not terribly difficult to doctor a check or even completely forge one. This is why it's so important for you to have some kind of positive pay protection, and why more and more banks are requiring their corporate customers to have this protection. I'll talk more about this shortly. But there's an even more compelling conclusion to be drawn from the information on this chart. The incidence of fraud attempts on payments being made electronically drops dramatically, as we see here for ACH debits. This means that electronic payments are far and away more safe than paper checks. Let's be careful, though, to draw the distinction between making payments via ACH or wire transfer and making an online purchase on the Internet. So while it's common to make the decision to move to electronic payments based on cost savings and accuracy improvements alone, avoiding fraud could actually be the bigger reason for making this move. Here's a quote from a recent ROI study done by one of our eBanking customers, Hersha Hospitality. We expect that 80% of our vendors will accept electronic transfers, improving their cash flow. After itemizing the cost of continuing to print checks, which included $21,000 in postage alone, we found an annual savings of $64,830. That's a 3-year savings of almost $200,000. The cost of our software is insignificant compared to that savings number. The level of savings you would achieve would depend on the size of your company, of course, but with that said, even smaller organizations would benefit from taking advantage of eBanking. There are more testimonials and comments on our website. Now let's take a few minutes to give you a high-level look at each of the modules in the eBanking suite. Please keep in mind that each of the modules can be purchased independently of one another. However, if you do purchase more than one at the same time, we offer a multi-module discount. The first 2 modules, Accounts Payable Electronic Funds Transfer, or AP-EFT, and Accounts Receivable EFT, have some things in common to recognize. They both move funds from one account to another. Their function is facilitated by the National Automated Clearinghouse Association, or NACHA. This is where the term ACH comes from. It's a standard that's unique to the U.S. and is used by all U.S. banks. When using the ACH system, transactions must clear to completion within 48 hours. The first module in the suite, AP-EFT, uses the ACH credit method to push money from your account into your payee's account pay vouchers for vendors, employee reimbursements, and tax payments. Additionally, in September of 2009, a new transaction type was mandated by NACHA called the International ACH Transaction, or IAT. Brought about by terrorist activities in recent years, this transaction type is designed to allow a U.S. company to pay vendors overseas using the ACH system. You can find out more about this new transaction type on our website. Your bank can also provide you with more education. The current version of AP EFT fully supports IAT. Other features of AP EFT include support for email remittance advices, whereby an optional automatic email can be sent to your payee itemizing what the payment is for. The ability to control whether you want to pay electronically or by check on a voucher-by-voucher basis, and account and amount approval to help protect you against embezzlement. This concept is important for you to understand, especially if you're already using this module. When you set up a vendor to pay them via ACH, you're entering their banking information into their record. It's important to be able to protect that information so an employee can't go into the system and replace that information with their own account number and have the funds deposited to their account. Our security features protect you from that. I'm spending some time on this because we just learned of a user that unfortunately did not implement that security feature and was taken for $45,000 because an employee did just that. If that company had had the account approval feature turned on, they would have been protected. The eBanking suite allows you to designate an approver who authorizes any changes made to a vendor's account information. That's account approval. When using amount approval, we allow you to set 2 levels of approval, each having up to 5 designated approvers from which to choose. For example, payments under $5,000 don't require an approval. Between $5,000 and $10,000 requires 1 approver, and anything over $10,000 requires 2 designated approvers. Remember, AP EFT uses the ACH system and is intended for use in the U.S. only. If you're a non-U.S. company that needs similar functionality, you'll want to look at Wire Transfer Plus, which we'll be discussing shortly. AR EFT uses the ACH debit method to pull money from your customer's account and put it in yours. Obviously, this requires a prearranged agreement with your customer to do so. It's a wonderful cash flow accelerator. The idea is that when you create an invoice in the SL system, it has a special terms code on it that causes AR EFT to create a transaction inside the ACH batch. When the ACH transaction is completed, the funds wind up in your account and the payment is auto-applied to the related invoice. This module is great if you're doing recurring payments, subscriptions, renewals, or the like. So, to review the features of these modules, both use the NACHA standard. They can also handle remittance and payment advices by email. Here's an example of a simple email remittance advice. Email handling is optional and fully configurable, including the ability to attach files. Both modules are multi-company and multi-account enabled. Prenotes provide the opportunity to confirm account information with the bank before processing live transactions for a new EFT vendor. They were required prior to 1997, but now they're optional. That's due to the drastically increased volume of activity. As you process your payments in SL, eBanking creates the ACH file to send to the bank via the web, which is currently the most popular, FTP site, etc. All of these methods are supported. Again, both modules are an extension of the functionality of the SL, AP, and AR modules. Your users won't even know they're using a third-party program. The third module in the eBanking suite is Positive Pay. As you saw earlier, payment fraud is rampant, most commonly involving paper checks. Positive Pay's mission is to keep you safe from check fraud. As part of your normal check printing steps, a file is sent to the bank that lists those checks you've just printed. The bank adds this to their master list of checks printed by your company. If a check is presented for payment that's not on that list, then the bank should not clear it. If they do, you're not held accountable for that error. More and more banks are requiring their corporate customers to have some kind of positive pay protection. In all likelihood, your bank offers software like this, but it will probably require double entry of information, while positive pay does not because it's fully integrated with your AP check process. So there's a seamless automatic transfer of data. We'll see more about that shortly. Every bank has a different format. As you'll see in a moment, we have that covered too. Positive pay protects AP checks and payroll checks. Like AP EFT and AR EFT, it's multi-company and multi-account enabled. It uses the same communications methods that are supported in these modules. Here's a recent list of the formats included in positive pay. I'll pause here for a moment so you can see if your bank is listed here. Didn't see your bank listed? No worries. We add new formats all the time. You can check our website for a current list. If we don't currently support your bank's format, we'll add it to positive pay at no extra charge. Lockbox Processing is next up. If you're using SL's Accounts Receivable module and you have high volume cash receipts, you might want to take a look at this module. The concept is really pretty simple. Your customers send their checks to a central location, which could be a P.O. box or your office. You'll have a lockbox agent or your bank or even someone inside your company that collects your checks. This person gathers those checks, tabulates them, prepares the deposit, and sends you an electronic file that lists those checks, amounts, check numbers, etc. Lockbox then imports that file into your SL system and automatically applies the receipts to the invoices it was able to match. This is a major time saver. Anything that can't automatically be matched up is put in a special workbench where we give you tools to help you zero in on what that check is for. As part of your module setup, we provide a tool for you to easily map your Lockbox file to your SL system. This is what facilitates the auto application when the file is imported. Lockbox Processing supports credit memos and discounts and is multi-company, multi-account, and multi-currency enabled. So, the auto application of payments coupled with the tools to help you with incoming payments that are hard to identify can really help you save time and reduce mistakes. That's why we have folks who are using this module even though they don't have an outside Lockbox service. Here's an example of using the Customer and Document Lookup tool. You can create as many custom views as you like, then call up a saved view that suits your purpose when you need it. This view is presenting open invoices by open balance in descending order. Let's say we're trying to match up a payment for $19,050 because the other information supplied with the payment was ambiguous. Here we've come across two invoices with this balance. By highlighting one of the invoices, we can get the details that help us identify the proper invoice. At that point, we simply click the Return Highlighted Record button to pass this record back to the workbench for payment application. Creating or modifying a view is a simple point-and-click process. Notice that you can have up to 3 levels of presentation with a filter and corresponding sort order for each field. Wire Transfer Plus, the final module in the eBanking suite, is identical in flow and operation to the AP EFT module. The difference is that where the AP EFT module uses the US ACH system, Wire Transfer Plus uses a bank-specific format and transaction specification because there is no standard. In the U.S., wires are facilitated by the Federal Reserve System and payments are guaranteed to clear funds in 6 hours. With foreign banks, that will depend on their particular system. Most typically, it's used for domestic wires and paying vendors who are in other countries. In all cases, each bank uses their own format, which must be specifically developed. I'll be addressing this shortly. As I said, the functionality of Wire Transfer Plus is the same as AP EFT, as you can see from this list of features. It's the lack of a standard that makes Wire Transfer Plus different. We have a growing list of bank formats and transaction types that we support, which you can view on our website. If we don't presently support your bank's format and transaction type, it'll have to be developed, and there'll be a development charge for that that will vary depending on the complexity. Be sure to provide your reseller with a copy of your bank spec so we can give you a price for that format. Once the format's developed, it becomes part of Wire Transfer Plus and is supported accordingly. Okay, let's run through the workflow so you can see how easy it is to use eBanking. Since AP EFT and Wire Transfer Plus are nearly identical, I'll demonstrate AP EFT and talk a bit about Wire. I'll also be showing you where Positive Pay fits into the picture. This is the entire eBanking menu. Any of the 5 modules you purchase will be managed from this menu. Let's start by opening Vendor Banking Entry. When making payments electronically, we need to provide additional information about a vendor that you already have set up in your SL system. Here we've brought up the record for AdventureWorks Office Supply. Notice that the format ID indicates that we're going to pay them through the US ACH system. We've added their bank account information and set them up with an entry class of Cash Disbursement, or CCD, which is typical for corporate accounts. We've also indicated that we want the AP clerk to be able to change the entry class when entering a voucher for AdventureWorks in Voucher Entry, so that an exception can be made, allowing a specific voucher to be paid by check, such as when they pay us a personal visit. That's controlled by this box. The account approval status is showing that the bank account information has not been changed since it was last approved. This is an important security feature, as I mentioned before, and should be used by anyone using these modules. It protects you from a dishonest employee changing the account information and causing any payments to this vendor to be deposited in their own account. If we want to send remittance advices by email to this vendor, we set that information up on the Email tab. Email is fully configurable, including the ability to attach files. For example, payments to this vendor may typically cover a large number of vouchers, and you'd rather provide the information in an attachment instead of in the body of the email. As you can see here, numerous other options are available. Here we've brought up the vendor record for Rebecca Laszlo, one of our employees. We reimburse her for travel expenses through direct deposit. Again, we've specified her bank account information and see that it hasn't been changed since it was last approved. In this case, we've selected the Prearranged Deposit Entry Class, or PPD, which is typically used for expense reimbursements. Notice that we've said that we don't want to allow the AP clerk to change the payment method at voucher entry time. We'll see that in the voucher entry screen in just a moment. Since Alpine House Movers is an overseas company that we periodically use, we want to pay their vouchers by wire. Our bank is JP Morgan Chase, so we're using the US Chase Access format with the FedWire transaction type. Again, we have Alpine's bank information specified, but we'll put additionally required information into any one of these 3 wire transfer tabs, which become enabled when you have licensed Wire Transfer Plus. Other than that, it's identical in nature to setting up a vendor for ACH payment. Now that we have our setup information established, we can get on with our normal daily flow. Here's a voucher we've entered for AdventureWorks. If you'll recall, we set them up so we could normally pay them electronically via ACH using the standard cash disbursements, or CCD, entry class, as we see here. Notice that the entry class field is enabled for us to change, as we'll see in a moment. Here's a voucher we've entered to reimburse our employee, Rebecca Laszlo, for her travel expenses. Notice that the PPD entry class that we set up in her vendor record is disabled, as we requested in her vendor setup record. Here's another voucher for AdventureWorks. In this case, they're coming in to pick up a check, so we don't want to pay them via ACH. Since we set up their record to allow the entry class to be changed at voucher entry time, we simply change the value to pay by check. Finally, here's a voucher from Tailspin Excavation. They're a vendor that we never pay electronically, so we didn't need to set up any information in vendor banking entry. So that leaves us with 4 vouchers to pay, 2 electronically via ACH using AP EFT, and 2 by paper check to be protected by positive pay. Now that we're ready to pay the vouchers we just entered, we run payment selection just as we always do. Here we see the 4 vouchers we entered, and here are the details. The next step is to run the eBanking payment selection filter. Notice that eBanking has separated the standard payment selection into 2 batches, one for paper checks and one for ACH payments. The standard check preview report clearly shows the 2 checks to print and subsequently protect with positive pay. Now we print the checks as part of our normal processing flow. We can see our checks by viewing the selections. Of course, after printing the checks, we keep the batch as usual. The resulting batch is now available for inclusion in a positive pay file to be sent to the bank. This is the eBanking Create and Send screen. In this case, we're doing our positive pay processing, so we have that tab selected. We see here that eBanking has created a new file number in the upper grid that contains the batch or batches in the lower grid. By clicking the Details button, we can see the checks that are contained in the file. And here are our checks for AdventureWorks and Tailspin. When we're ready to create the positive pay file and transmit it to the bank, we simply check the file or files and click the Begin Processing button. eBanking then produces an audit report for your records. Again, we see our checks here. We're then taken to the bank's website for us to log in and upload the positive pay file. Once the bank receives our file of 2 new checks, they'll add it to their master list of checks that we've approved for them to clear. After we've uploaded the file and exit, we're given the option to keep the file or delete it and recreate it later in case something failed in the upload. We can now see that the file is completed and is available for future analysis. In summary, here's what's involved in using positive pay. There's no vendor setup required. Remember, we're simply protecting the checks you're already writing. You follow your normal flow by entering vouchers and selecting the vouchers to pay. The eBanking selection filter is used to automatically separate electronic payments from checks. Print and keep your checks as you normally would. Create and send the positive pay file to the bank, and you're done. To continue our demonstration, now that we've finished protecting our paper checks with positive pay, let's electronically pay the other 2 vouchers we've already entered. Back in the same eBanking Create and Send screen, we now focus on the Electronic Funds Transfer Wire Plus tab. The first thing we do is create a new eBanking file with a payment batch or batches we wish to send to the bank for electronic payment. To do this, we click the New eBanking File button and make our selection. In this case, batch 1011 contains the remaining payments we selected earlier. Click OK, Accept, and we see that eBanking file 43 has been created. On clicking Begin Processing, the file is created and we get an audit report for our records. Here we can clearly see our electronic payment to AdventureWorks and to Rebecca Laszlo. eBanking now takes us to our bank's website to upload the file. Incidentally, for additional security, you can easily make it someone else's responsibility to upload the ACH file that was just created. Some companies will even encrypt the file before uploading it. Of course, the bank would need to have the corresponding decryption software to make that work. As with positive pay, after the file is uploaded, we're given a chance to keep the file or delete it and start over. In this case, because of our configuration, we get a message asking us if we want to release the manual check batch that's just been created. There's a setup option that allows us to choose to go through the same printing process as we do when printing paper checks, or bypass check printing altogether and create a manual check instead. In our case, we chose to create a manual check batch and to have eBanking give us the option to release the batch at this time. When we come back to the Create and Send screen, we see the file has been created and is available for historical reference. In summary, here's what's involved in using AP EFT or Wire Transfer Plus. First, for each vendor that you plan on paying electronically, you need to tell eBanking how you want to pay, the vendor's banking information, whether you want to send remittance advices by email, etc. Then you follow your normal flow by entering vouchers and selecting vouchers to pay. The eBanking payment selection filter is used to automatically separate electronic payments from checks. Remember that running your electronic payments through the check printing process so you can print hard copy remittance advices is optional. The final step is to create and send the ACH or wire file to the bank, and you're done. Here's the eBanking module setup screen. I'm showing you this because I want to emphasize the point that although each of the 5 eBanking modules can be licensed separately, they're really all part of one application. When you purchase a particular module, the registration key unlocks that module's functionality and all the various configuration options that help you tailor the software's behavior to meet your needs. So if you start with one module, Positive Pay for example, and add another module later, such as AP EFT, there is no additional software installation involved. You simply unlock the module, do the setup, and you're on your way. That's it for this overview of a couple of our eBanking modules. While eBanking cuts across all industries, we also offer solutions that will help you maximize the benefit of your Microsoft Dynamics SL system if your company is project or manufacturing driven. Since we sell our software through the Microsoft Dynamics SL reseller channel, please contact your reseller to get pricing and place an order. We'll be happy to answer questions. Just direct them to sales@sksoft.com. Better yet, contact your reseller. Since we have over 1,000 customers happily using our software, chances are good that your reseller already has experience with eBanking. You can also get more information on our website at www.sksoft.com. We look forward to being of service. Thank you and have a great day.